San Antonio.
George Strait is one of the most important country artists of all time, but does he belong on country music's Mount Rushmore? Actually, I'd kind of love your opinion on that in the comments section below. We can debate the pros and cons like adults, right? Pro, he has more number ones than any artist ever, and he's responsible as any star of the 80s and 90s for keeping country, country. Con, well, I guess the big argument against him is there might be 4 artists you'd like to cast before him. Johnny, Dolly, Merle, Loretta, Garth, Shania, George Jones, Hank Jr. and Sr. I'm going to suggest that right now George Strait isn't a Mount Rushmore artist. But he should be, and he may be doing what he needs to do to get there. Hang with me. When you learn what he's been up to, I think you'll agree. This is going to sound like a little bit of a name drop, but my ears first perked while I was talking to Winona Judd last fall. She shared a story about how George Strait has been something of a mentor to her over the years. It was surprising because you just never hear George Strait stories like that. He lives in Texas, he really doesn't do many interviews, and he has a pretty insular group of co-writers and collaborators. The mystique is part of the legend, but the risk is having no one to carry on your legacy. Bit of an aside here, but I think part of the reason that we consider Loretta Lynn to be an all-timer is because there was a revolution with her later albums. There was also a movie, a great museum, and efforts to inject her name back into pop culture. Contrast that with someone like Barbara Mandel, who was really prolific in the 80s. But she hasn't been nearly as intentional about reminding us how important she was. Very few people like Babs for Mount Rushmore, even if she has that kind of resume. Ronnie Milsap is in a similar position. And honestly, so is someone like John Denver, who isn't a Mount Rushmore artist, but is certainly worthy of the Country Music Hall of Fame. Thumbs up if you agree, or list your Mount Rushmore 4 in the comments section below. If Dolly or Reba makes it, you'll love what we have at the Taste of Country store. Maybe George Strait for President should be our next t-shirt. Big thanks to everyone who's supported this channel already. There's links in the description section with new items added monthly. The reason why Winona gushing over George Strait tingled my spidey senses is because I've learned that there are no coincidences in Nashville. She wasn't the only one. In September 22, Parker McCollum told us this.
Did you get to talk to him any this time? Or
No, I never saw him this time.
Okay.
He's a mega king of country superstar. So
can you text him?
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't text him.
No, I mean, like, can you? Not now, but like, can you? Like, if you wanted to text George Strait, like, could you?
I mean, I'm sure. Yeah, I mean, we're on the same record label. I'm sure I could probably weasel my way into that, but I don't think I would.
Within a year, we got this. And then recently, we got this.
I introduced myself and just was like, hey, man, I'm from Texas. I was able to get a record deal. I moved out here to Nashville, and we're getting a little momentum, and just wanted to say how big of an influence you are to me, and, gushing like I didn't want to do, but I couldn't help from doing. And he looks at me and goes, I know who you are. You're doing great, man. Congratulations.
Oh, see ya.
I was like, all right, that's all I needed. See you, buddy. Yeah, thank you. I excused myself pretty quickly after that.
This kind of thing happens a lot, and when you've been covering any sort of topic for a while, you become really sensitive to the patterns. For example, Reba's announcement that she was joining The Voice came after several other lower-profile announcements, like a TV movie, and I think even an album that, as it turns out, coincided with her time on The Voice. Kenny Chesney just did a round of interviews, and then, oh yeah, he announced a new album. It'd be pretty easy to label all of this conjecture, except for a group of pictures found on Instagram last fall. Here's what I'm talking about. Do you see it? Zoom in just a little bit. What is Chris Stapleton doing in that photo? Oh, yeah. I think you know where I'm headed. We actually covered this story on Taste of Country, but kind of forgot about it. It was a busy month. Studio guitarist Brent Mason shared that one on Instagram, and he shared more like it, like this one, that at the very least shows Stapleton is invested in whatever George Strait's doing. So a George Strait and Chris Stapleton duet seems pretty likely. I mean, they're going to be touring together again in 2024, so why the heck not? But is that all? I don't think so. But I'm going to admit that what I'm suggesting from this point on is more theory than something worth betting on. It's been 5 years since George Strait released a studio album, so, if that's all he's doing, fine, cool. Look forward to it. Several artists his age with a similar legacy have found innovative ways to preserve that legacy, however. Brooks and Dunn made the Reboot album, and that was pretty huge. Winona and the Judds were just spotlighted on a really popular tribute album, and they got a ton of press. Willie Nelson and Dolly Parton were inducted in the Country Music Hall of Fame. Why not George? And finally, Dolly just put on a masterclass in promoting her new album and reclaiming her throne as Queen of Country Music. In 2024 or 2025, look for a George Strait legacy play. That means something like maybe a museum or a bar and restaurant. Most definitely that's going to be in Texas. An album like Reboot feels like a no-brainer, and what if he toured with some of those up-and-comers, maybe even played a few festival shows together? Hardly anyone thinks of country music's Mount Rushmore without thinking of Dolly Parton, but that may not have been true 5 years ago. I'm not sure that George is a Mount Rushmore artist today, but whether he becomes the next Dolly or the next Ronnie Millsap will depend on what he does over the next 5 or even 10 years. Maybe he'll even accept that invite to the Grand Ole Opry. Oh, you didn't know he wasn't a member of the Grand Ole Opry? Well, we did a whole video about that. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and pin that in the comment section below. I'm Billy Dukes for Taste of Country. Thanks for watching, and thanks for subscribing.